Hi, welcome to the Gamesplainer. I'm Jeff the Gamesplainer, and today I'm gamesplaining Fort. Now, Fort is a recent release from Leader Games, who are responsible for Root. It plays from 2 to 4 players. This game is a lot lighter than their other games have been, but kind of keeps that very vaguely the core concept of different player power. But it's only very minutely within this particular game. This is a pretty quick deck building game. So if you've played deck builders before, you'll have an idea of how this one plays. There's a lot of different elements or different names for things in this game than in other deck building games. So it can actually take a little bit to kind of get your head around the means of stuff, but everything is built off pictures on the cards or little icons for things, which we are used to doing from things like Race for the Galaxy, where there's just a whole bunch of iconography to get your head around. But fortunately with this game, there is also a card that each player has that has what that iconography means, so you can easily look it up. The whole idea of deck building with this game is that you're actually going to play one of the cards in your hand. So you have 5 cards in your hand, you'll play one of them. A lot of those cards have a little multiplier symbol. So if you play a card with a whole bunch of the same suited cards, you will get that action a whole bunch of times. There's also the public ability and private ability on each card. And so you can use the card for both things for yourself, but everyone else can follow your action by playing one of that suit to get that action once. And here's the kicker. If you use the action to take pizza in, so that's one of the resources, pizza and toys are the 2 resources we're talking about. So if you use the action to take pizza in, everyone else who follows the action must also take pizza in. And suddenly you start thinking, oh, what are they trying to do? So what can I do? The other element that's kind of a bit different than a lot of the deck builders I see is that once you've played the cards, any cards that you've played will go into your discard pile. So stand discard pile. Once you're out of cards, you shuffle up discard pile. That becomes the pile that you draw from. But the cards that you haven't used, as long as they don't have a little star on them, which is your starting 2 cards, they will go into your yard. And the cards that are in your yard are now available for anyone at the table to take. Because at the end of your turn, you take one of the cards, either a card at someone else's yard, or a card that's in the playground, which is the 3 cards in the middle that you face up, or you take a blind card. And that choice of which card to take and where to take the card from can be really important. There are cards in this game that allow you to discard cards or trash cards if you like a different type of language. And once again, really important, because what the essence of the game is you're trying to build up your fort to a different level. And the first person to get to the top level is going to get a heap of points for getting right up there. There's an extra 4 points for being the first up there, but for being up there, it's like 25 points or something. It's really quite large and quite significant. If you haven't got up there, it's really hard to also have a chance of winning the game. Now, speaking of which, points in this game, I had to play this game last week, and what I found is I managed to finish the game by getting my fort up to the top level, and game finishes, I had maybe 10 points, maybe somewhere in that ballpark, give or take some, to start with. Then I got all the fort points. I then got the extra 4 points for being the first person to get to the top of the fort level. And then there's also some hidden cards which give you some extra points for something secret. And so I got some good amount of points off that as well. The other person who was playing didn't have any points at all through the game, so I was starting on 0. They'd only pushed their fort up to maybe a level 3-ish, so they only got maybe 8 points. I'm just making up those numbers, so please bear with it. So it's minimal points off that. They didn't get the 4 points, and they didn't also get many points from their private gold card that they'd managed to collect. And so there was this huge disparity between the 2 players, and I think it's because of keeping in mind the goal of the game. It is possible to play this game without really achieving the goal, just kind of going through the motions of I'm doing something, but I'm not getting a heap of points or any points for it. Building up your fort is really important. It's in the title of the game. But it's important to remember to build up the fort. There's a whole bunch of stuff you can do that isn't necessarily building up the fort, that doesn't really give you points. So you just got to be really careful with this game that you don't kind of get stuck into these, oh, I'm just going to do this action because it's kind of fun to do this, but you don't get any points for it. What I found is taking cards in that allow you to get points depending on where you have cards or where you have goods or all that type of stuff is really super important. And then actually using them on the way through. Because quite often you'll be looking at a hand of cards and one will allow you to upgrade your fort, one will allow you to get some points, another might allow you to get some goods in. If you don't have any goods, then you can't upgrade the fort. So that one's not worthwhile to you at the moment. So it's kind of coming to your hand at the wrong time. But this other one that there's a lot of thinking and processing and what's going to get me the most push forward. Oh, I need some goods. Okay, so I'll get goods. But I've just given up on getting some points that I might have been able to get. It's a real crunch on when to do stuff and how many goods you can get in, because there is an X amount limit on how many goods you can carry and on your board. And so getting those goods up to those levels, it's actually quite hard sometimes. But if you get a magic hand that says, hey, you can get 4 of this good because you've got a whole bunch of cards of the same type, suddenly you're able to fill up your board, and then next time around when you get the pizza thing to push up the height of your fort, you can probably just step straight into that without really worrying too much about it. But if you're getting the card that gets you resources in, but you only have one of those cards, you're only going to get 1 resource. And there's a real tug on, oh, I can do that, can't do that. So what I've found with deck building is most of the time you'll have 5 cards in hand, you'll play all 5 of the cards from your hand. You may have to pay for them. So like Plunder Bunge, you have to pay for each good or each thing that each card that you're doing. You have to pay a penalty, I guess you call it. But on something like Harry Potter, each of the cards that come out, you get to gain all the stuff that's on all of the cards. And what I found majority of the deck building games I played is that you put the cards out and you get all the stuff that you want from those cards. With this one, you're only getting the stuff off one of the cards. So suddenly you're put into a different position of having to make a decision about what to do with this card before you actually use it. What I found with this game is the reading of the rules, while yes, it makes sense, because they've tried to use kid language, because that's the whole kind of theme of the game, is this kids hanging out and building a fort. And that's really cool. But because they've used kid language, suddenly they've had to give a translation for what a lot of the language means on the way through. And I found that in the reading of the rulebook, it's actually a little bit tricky to kind of get your head around some things. It took me a couple of times to read the rulebook to actually realize that it's a deck building game. I think that I misread or just kind of skimmed over a tiny bit at the beginning. I was like, this doesn't feel right. I read it again. It's like, this game's a deck builder. I totally understand what I'm doing now. So if you've played deck builders before, this game will come really easily to you. You'll understand exactly what you're doing. If you haven't played deck builders before, this is a deck builder. You start with 10 cards, you have 5, you use them, they go here or into the yard in this game, then you draw the next 5. The other thing that I've found that I've forgotten a number of times is to add a card into my hand. So at the end of your turn, you're adding a card from the playground or from someone else's yard or from the face down deck. Adding that card to your hand, I fear that in the Gamesplay, I haven't edited it yet, but I fear that in the Gamesplay, I've forgotten to do that a few times. So I do apologize if that is the case. Please just bear with it and keep pushing forward. So look, I think that I enjoy it. I think that playing Fort requires people to have played it before to kind of really get into it. So you're going to have that first playthrough to kind of go, oh, okay, I understand what's happening. But after that, everyone should know what they're doing. So I'll leave it there. Please go ahead and watch my Gamesplay and Gamesplanation to get a feel for how the game actually plays and what I'm talking about. If you have any games that you would like to be Gamesplaned, please shoot me an email to thegamesplainer@gmail.com. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter @thegamesplainer to keep up to date with the games that I'm playing. Subscribe to my videos to keep up to date with the games that I'm gamesplaining. And until next time, enjoy gaming!